Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm the host, JR. I've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. Playoff time is here. Me and Zach, we have all the reactions set, ready to go, loaded up into our systems. I know Zach is just ready to explode tonight. Zach, will the explosion tonight be good, bad, happy, sad, angry, confused? What kind of explosion are we looking for tonight from you?
Listen, I think I'm just going to cancel all my non-conference Power Four games. That's just
You know
how
the
I feel.
funniest thing about that?
They didn't
That
play any.
well, like the SEC teams, like they never had any.
Let's cancel our game against 5-7 Wisconsin.
Well, it's like in Alabama's like, well, we're never playing an out of conference game again. It's like, dude, you lost to Oklahoma. They're in the SEC. You lost. I don't even know. You lost to Vanderbilt. They're in the SEC. Like
I
it's like,
I
oh,
just
we
think
we lost to Georgia out of conference. It's like, no, you played Georgia and you beat them. You just
yeah.
lost to everybody else that's bad on your schedule.
All right, so here's the explosion. Here's the
Okay,
explosion, okay?
I'm ready for it.
And I'm hot about this. So
Okay.
everybody is saying that people are missing the point about this. That basically they're saying, well, if strength of schedule isn't going to matter, then just forget it. And then people respond by saying, you lost to Vandy, you lost. And their response is, you don't understand. Why risk it? That's the point. And my counterpoint is because if Alabama had two losses, they would have been above SMU, even with one loss.
If you
Strength of
would have scored,
schedule does matter. It just doesn't matter when you lose a lot. Just like Purdue, their
if you would
strength of
have
schedule's great. They
if you would
stink.
have scored more points than you have losses on your schedule, you might have got in the playoffs, Alabama. You would have scored more points
Just
against Oklahoma
yeah,
than you had losses. You would have had a shot.
yeah. And listen, I understand Alabama, SMU, Alabama, Miami. Like I think there's legitimate frustration with every team, right? In that logjam because it's a flawed system. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the 12 seed or the 11 seed. Like if you're arguing about that, you have so many warts on your resume that honestly, just be mad at yourself.
Yeah.
Like this is not the committee's fault. The committee was hamstrung a bit. Like I just the tears from Nick Saban and ESPN personalities. It's like what I mean, it's like finally you realize what Ohio State fans have been going through for the past 10 years when they've had legitimate excuses to get in a four-team playoff and they've been left out. This is the first time they've been told no. And you know what? It's good for the soul. Sometimes you just need to be told no. Okay? It'll be okay. It'll be all right. But you know
I will
what? Four
say it.
teams are in for the Big Ten.
I will say it time blue in the face. Alabama dropped the same number of spots for losing to a 500 Oklahoma team by 3 touchdowns that Ohio State fell after losing to the number one team in the nation last year by a touchdown. Like I I just don't get it. You know who I do get though, Zach, because I do get our awesome listeners. So let's check in the
Yeah.
chat, see how everybody's
Yeah.
doing. We got John here, the Battle of Indiana, December 20th, 8 p.m. Going to be electric. I am stoked for that. I got my Indiana shirt on. I'm ready for it.
Mm, yeah.
I had to put my Ohio State shirt on over it when I was on the OHL podcast because I didn't want to be labeled as an Indiana fan. But you know, got my Indiana shirt on. Casual Big Ten. I'm here. Says
Ken.
thanks, Ken. We appreciate you. Are you wearing
Yeah.
your Luke Altmaier jersey?
He should
I,
be.
I imagine he just sleeps in that. Um, PSU Jim, hi guys, can't wait for these playoffs. Go Big Ten. Great shot at the conference getting the natty. That's true. That's true, Zach. We got 4 Big Ten teams. Of
yeah.
course, 2 of them are going to play each other in the second round if one of them wins their game, so that'll eliminate one there. But still, 4 Big Ten games. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. I Penn State, I mean, their pathway is
They
really,
have the
really
best path, I
nice.
think. I think they have
But
the best path.
I thought they acquitted themselves quite nicely. I know we'll talk about the game, but I thought Drew Aller played well. I know I had a couple picks, But I thought Drew Aller played well. I thought that offensive line played well. I thought the defense at times really stepped up. Penn State to me looked like a legit contender last night.
Mm-hmm. I think they did too. And that's why I wasn't too upset with them not like having Ohio State jump them, because it was like Ohio State did not look like a contender against Michigan, but Penn State looked like a contender against Oregon. So
Yep.
we'll talk about it. We'll recap the game here in just a sec. Got Doug here. Says hello, gentlemen. Casual. Thanks for being here, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Joe, it's such a shame that instead of pursuing some of the truly interesting storylines, ESPN decides to whine for 20 minutes about how the SEC is being mistreated. Zach, is there any company that whines more about the mistreatment of the SEC than the ESPN? Just letter programs here.
I mean, I can understand it. When you've got that much money invested and someone says your product stinks, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? Your tears are delicious.
Just like Philip says.
Like,
Just like Philip says.
And listen, if there's an SEC fit, again, I get it, but also like this is what the rest of the country has been feeling for the
Yeah.
past 20 years. SEC's the best. SEC's the best. SEC, you're not.
I will say kind of what the rest of the country has been feeling. The rest of the country has been feeling what SMU almost felt, which is
That's
we have
true.
2 losses. How does a team like Alabama get ahead of us with 3 losses and 2 of those to nearly 500 teams? So, all right. Anybody? Oh, there's a bunch of people in the chat. Okay. Let's do Yankee here. I think Oregon receivers are better than Ohio State's receivers.
Those are fighting words, Yankee.
I mean, they're both very good receiver groups. Tez Johnson is one of the best receivers in the country, if not the best.
I think they're different. I think they might be 1A and 1B. But I think Tez Johnson, Tez Johnson is, I think, who we thought Emeka would be. Like, Emeka's just a more physical slot receiver, whereas Tez is more shifty. And I think that really does make him stand out. I also think their offense makes them look phenomenal, whereas I think Ohio State's offense is, well,
Yeah. No, I agree. That's
yeah.
exactly what I was going to say. I don't think Ohio State this year is showcasing their wide receivers as best they could. But I'm also not going to, argue with Yankee because their receivers haven't necessarily proved that they're the best this season. So I'm not going to agree with Yankee, but I'm not going to argue with Yankee, if that makes sense.
Tez Johnson was phenomenal last night.
Who was?
Tez was.
Oh, I thought you said
awesome
Will
last night.
Johnson. I was like, Zach, he did not play.
Okay. Will Johnson was great.
David Greenshield, thanks for being here, David. He says, how much did Penn State benefit from a weak schedule? They have a really good path to the semis. I mean, like, here's my thing. Teams do, like, there are teams that have a weak schedule, like Texas. I mean, Penn State did have a ranked win. Like, at least give them credit for that. They had a ranked win. Texas didn't even have a ranked win. But they didn't lose to Oklahoma. That's my thing. Like, even though, sure, some of these teams did have a weak schedule. I've been on Texas all season long about having a weak schedule, but they didn't lose. Like, they didn't lose to terrible teams, which is my same thing where I'm like, Ohio State should be ahead of Penn State, but Ohio State's the one that screwed it up because they lost to Michigan. It's not Penn State's fault. Penn State won the games they were supposed to win.
Yep.
So,
yeah. Well, and I know we'll talk about this more. The committee was consistent across the board with the conference championship games. Like, the losers didn't fall that much. Like, Texas didn't fall much. Penn State didn't fall much. SMU didn't fall much. And they were consistent in where they had them ranked before and after, in terms of Texas and where Texas and Penn State were in the pecking order. And so I know people, like, we might have disagreed with where Texas and Penn State should have been pre-conference championship game, but a lot of people are giving the committee crap. And I'll just say they were consistent across the board on that metric. And I think that's to be commended.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right. Zach, let's talk about this Oregon Penn State game, and then we'll get into some more playoff talk. So, all right, everybody, Oregon and Penn State. Let me move myself over here. There we go. There we go. That way, I'm not blocked by half the half of the thing there. All right, so Oregon beats Penn State 45-37. It was much more of a shootout than a lot of people, including myself, thought it would be. I thought this game was going to be much. I don't know if it was going to be like a super close game until the end, where it was like a field goal at the end of it. But I figured this would be a close game for most of it. But I was thinking somewhere maybe in the 20s or 30s. I did not expect a team to get up above 40 in this game. What were your thoughts, Zach?
Well, we both picked them in the 20s. And
Yeah,
so you had 27-24 Penn State. I had 27-23 Oregon. And we were almost right in the first half, right? It was just 28
yeah.
24 at one point in the first half. Then Oregon got a field goal. So if it was a one half game, we were right on it. I was very I mean, I think Oregon played well. I think my one concern, and I think Gary Danielson brought it up in the broadcast, is I am concerned about Oregon's how thin Oregon's defensive tackle depth is. Because
Mm,
I think as this game wore on, you saw Penn State being able to I mean, they were gashing Oregon all night long with the running
right.
game. But especially as the game went on, you saw Katron Allen really break off some big runs. You know, he had 14 carries for 124 yards. It might be one of the best performances he's had all season against a defense that we thought was top 10, maybe top 5 in the country. So I'm concerned about that, especially if Oregon has to play, you know, Tennessee or I'm trying to think who they would the winner of I think as they go on in the playoff, I'm concerned about them with the defensive tackle depth, but I think the big takeaway for both of these teams is that these are two very good defenses and their offenses played above their levels. I thought Drew Aller played really well. I know he had the pick uh, that I think really sealed the game ultimately in the first half. You know, it was thrown behind. It wasn't a good throw, but I thought he ripped some throws. I thought his receivers made some plays, which has been what we've been critical of. Their defense made stops when they had to. Um, they never back down. And I think those are all important things. And I think if the thing you came away with is, oh, James Franklin lost another big one, I think you're actually missing the bigger point, which is they opened it up and they let it all loose, which is what we've been wanting from Penn State throughout James Franklin's tenure. And they
Mm-hmm.
did that. I just think Oregon's the best team in the country. And so I think Oregon demonstrate that. You know, Yankee talked about it. The receivers were phenomenal. Jordan James and I think not Sappington, that's the kicker. Uh
Whittington. Whittingham.
Whittington. Yeah, I wanted to say Carrington. I'm like, nope, that's a receiver from days gone by. Whittington. I thought both those running backs ran hard, and they ran hard against a good defensive front. Uh, Dylan Gabriel played immaculately once again. And I thought against a really good pass rush, Oregon neutralized them with their offensive line and with their timing. So I thought it was, JD Pickell said that the SEC championship was a
Don't get me started
preview of
on
the
him.
national championship game. I think this actually might be a preview of the national championship game. I thought this was two of the best teams in the country fighting blow for blow. And I think what Penn State fans should be encouraged by is that they went blow for blow with Oregon.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think Penn State did a phenomenal job of staying in the game when there were opportunities for Oregon to kind of put it away early. Their defense stepped up. Even at the end of that game, when Oregon could have ran the game out by running the ball, Penn State stayed in it. Now, unfortunately, Drew Aller threw that interception, which I don't know. We could go on and on with that play call and his decision. I don't know. I don't even know if it was his decision or if it was um, Andy Kotelnicki's decision where he's like, hey, you got man coverage there on the outside, just throw it up to your guy, which that seemed like it was predetermined before the snap. I don't know if it was Drew Aller or if it was Andy Kotelnicki, but that seemed like it was predetermined before the snap. And to me, like, I'm wondering what would have happened if Penn State would have just ran their normal offense.
Yeah.
If they would have utilized Tyler Warren, if they would have been okay with just going down the field, scoring a touchdown, getting a 2 point conversion, and which, by the way, can we talk about the terrible 2 point conversion play call? Like, James Franklin, dude, I am believing in you. I feel way better about James Franklin than I ever have before. Like, he coached a pretty good game in this one.
Yep.
What? I don't know. Statue of Liberty, whatever that was called, where you give it to Tyler Warren and then Tyler Warren's gonna throw it to Drew Allen. Did you have any thoughts on the 2 point conversion?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I listened to Kings of the North earlier today, and Doug Lesmerises made an interesting point. Like, analytics would say, like, if you don't want to go to overtime, you go for two when you score if you're down two scores, you go for two the first time, so that if you miss it, you go for two again the next time to, you cover yourself. I disagree with that, but I thought they made a good point, in particular that Penn State had a perspective or an attitude shift, a philosophical shift. They were going to be aggressive in this game, and sometimes I think when you are learning to be more aggressive, you kind of throw everything out the window to your detriment, and I think that's what that was. So I don't think it was the right call. I don't think the deep throw was the right call. But I think what I'm encouraged by is, for years, Penn State has been so conservative and so safe. And yes, they made mistakes in being aggressive. It was, dumb calls.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll even say this: they weren't back. Like, the interception was a backbreaking call, but you could understand it. And I think even with the 2 pointer, you can understand it. But I think that's one of those where you go back and you're like, yeah, we're never doing that again. Like, let's do that more intelligently.
Yeah, I mean, like a certain part of this felt like it was James Franklin, like, just telling himself he had to be more aggressive, and so he was like, "Well, I'm gonna do this now," and it's like I agree with Jim here. Like, I get going for two at times, but I don't think you go for two until you have to go for two.
Yeah.
Like, don't go for two and you're like, oh, we're anticipating we're gonna score on the next one, so it's less pressure now if we go for two. But if you don't get it, then it's the same amount of pressure next time going for two. So,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know, like, if my team is an underdog and I know my team is not as good as the other team, but we have a chance to win it by going for two, I'm going for two every single time. I don't think you go for two if the teams look evenly matched. And I felt like in this game, Oregon and Penn State looked pretty evenly matched there in the second half. I mean, when Penn State started coming back, now there for a while, it looked like Penn State didn't have an answer for Oregon's offense, but they eventually stopped it and did a good job, and then had some time to come back, and then they weren't able to capitalize on it. But if I'm James Franklin, I'm not going for two because I think my team can't compete with Oregon. They showed they can compete with Oregon. If anything, Penn State showed in this game they compete with anybody in the country, and they could win a national championship this year. I'm not picking it to happen, but it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. So this is a bit of a shift. I agree. I agree with what you're saying. This is a little bit of a shift. Was Evan Stewart not available last night?
No, he was. Harris just had him on lockdown, and also Tez
Okay.
Johnson was open a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Why throw to one 5-star receiver when you can throw it to Tez Johnson, right? Like,
Exactly, a
oh,
faster 5-star receiver.
yeah. By the
I
way,
don't even know if
11.
he's 5-star, but he's going to be highly drafted, so he might as well
Yeah.
be.
11 catches, 181 yards, one touchdown. Um, and then Kenyon Sadiq, their other tight end, had 2 catches, 30 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's an efficient night. And they
Mm-hmm.
apparently, I mean, the broadcast booth, they were, I mean, talking him up last night.
Mm-hmm. They were very impressed with Penn State and what they were able to do in this game. Zach, I'm trying to look for the big plays on my. Oh, there it is. Let's see. Penn State had 6 plays of 15 yard passing plays of 15 yards or more. They had 10 rushing plays of 10 yards or more to Oregon's 5 rushing plays of 10 yards or more. And Oregon had 9 passing plays of 15 yards or more.
Hmm.
Were you surprised by the number of big plays in this game? I was shocked.
Yeah,
I thought
I
this
was
would
shocked.
be a game that defenses would kind of lead the way. I mean, we both picked it in the 20s. And I thought this would be a game where, you get a few big plays here and there, but I mean, 15 total passing plays of 15 yards or more, 15 total running plays of 10 yards or more. That was pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, I was shocked. I thought it made sense if one team was going to run away with it. I thought Oregon could, and that was the pathway that was explosive plays. But we've talked about it. Penn State from the receiver position has struggled. The running backs weren't always healthy this year. And I think honestly what you got from Penn State, a big part of it was I think Nick Singleton finally healthy. I think Katron Allen, for the most part, he did ding his ankle late in the game, but uh Katron Allen looked the best he's looked all season. And I thought that offensive line really gained confidence, especially as Katron Allen kind of hammered away at them. And, the receivers really stepped up. Trey Wallace, 4 catches, 59 yards, touchdown. Amari Evans had the big touchdown catch in the second half. They utilized the running backs in the passing game creatively, which I thought was big. And so I think it was helpful that Penn State kind of knew who they were. They knew that their best players, Tyler Warren and your running backs. And so, okay, how do we generate offense from the passing game? Target your tight end and your running backs. And I think you see the benefit of having Kodal Nicky as your offensive coordinator. So I thought Penn State had a really good game plan, and I think Oregon's Oregon, right? Like
Yeah.
they chipped away with the running game. They had some big plays. Jordan James actually did not, he only ran for 4.3 yards per carry, despite the fact that he had some explosive runs. But that was really a lot of setup for Dylan Gabriel to go down the field.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest takeaway from this game was if you want to beat Oregon in the playoffs, you're going to have to score 30 plus points,
Yep.
which in today's day and age, I don't care how good your defense is. Oregon went up against one of the best defenses in the nation in Ohio State at home, and Ohio State scored, what was it, 32 to 33 or 31-32, whatever it was.
Yeah, 32.
But even if you score 30 or more, like you're not guaranteed to win that game. It's just the fact that Oregon is that efficient, their offense is that good, and their defense is opportunistic. And Dan Lanning's smart. Like Dan Lanning stole that game from Ohio State by stealing a couple possessions from them. And in this game here against Penn State, the Oregon defense was opportunistic, got turnovers. I mean, Drew Aller threw 2 picks in this game, and those were kind of the difference in some ways. I mean, the one interception that set up Oregon for the touchdown, I mean, that was killer. I
Yeah,
mean,
that
I
was the
think if this
killer.
was a game where it would have been even and Drew Aller didn't throw interceptions, this was a game Penn State probably could have won. But Oregon's defense, maybe they didn't stop Penn State every time down the field, but they were opportunistic and they gave their offense opportunities to capitalize. So, anything else on this one, Zach? Before we move on.
I think we've very very thoroughly covered this one.
I agree. All right, the playoffs. I have to move myself over even more now. Um, there we go. There we go. I wanted to start with Dave's comment because I thought Dave. We'll start with some Arizona State here. Where's Dave? I thought this was funny. I just couldn't bring it up until we started talking about it with playoffs. Arizona State, Shakaboo, Shakadoo, Yabba Dabba Doo, Scooby Dooby Doo. She went. Cam Scataboo, I believe is how you pronounce it. Yeah, he might deserve the Heisman after that game he had against Iowa State. My word, that was huge. And really, really one of the things that propelled them to blow out Iowa State in that one. Well, Arizona State got themselves the 4 seed. We have the Group of 5 champion as the 3 seed, Zach. And really, when I talk about teams that like didn't play anybody this season, some people think I might be talking about Penn State in that, and like to a certain extent, sure. Like Penn State had 1 ranked win, that's fine. But Texas has no ranked wins, and Boise State, their only ranked win is another Group of 5 team who they met in their championship game. And like, I don't know if a team has ever gotten more credit for a loss than Boise State has gotten in their loss to Oregon. I mean, Ohio State was getting a lot of credit for their loss to Oregon, but at least they got 2 top 10 wins later to kind of
Yeah.
back it up. Boise State, like they got a top 20 win against UNLV this week, and now they're the third team in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's a flaw. It's a flaw in how they're doing the buys for sure. Um, again, though, I think if the committee was going to apply logic evenly, they had Boise ranked ahead of Arizona State beforehand, and the results of the conference championship games, weren't gonna change that. Which I think, like personally, I thought Arizona State showed enough to be the 3 seed in this scenario, but I can understand it. But again, you look at Penn State's path: home against SMU, which I like. Anybody who's like, "Oh, that's an easy win," like there's a reason why SMU's in the playoff. They are a good team, and don't assume that Penn State's going to win that one, right? I think it's wide open. And I think I would say the same thing about Boise. Like whoever gets Boise, I'm like, as much as you want to dunk on him for being group of 5, do you really want to play Ashton Genty? Like I don't.
I don't.
Yeah. So like it's like Admiral Akbar. It's a trap. You think it's
Yeah, but everybody does know how good Ashton Genty is. Like, it's not like, wow, this guy's really good. How do you run for 200 yards on us? Like,
yeah. Well, and if the coach says that afterwards, then you know that coach should be fired.
yes.
It's like, how did this guy do this to us? Did you watch?
Have you watched college football this year? No, I've only been watching my team's games. It's like, okay, well.
When I played this game on NCAA 25 to simulate what it would be like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can understand it. I don't agree with it, but like at least I thought the committee was even in their logic.
Should the committee have docked Georgia for Carson Beck getting hurt and backup quarterback Gunnar Stockton? He got hurt too. Which, by the way, I mean, prayers for Carson Beck, dude. That arm did not look like it was attached to his body when he came out there. Like that looked like that was just floating next to him, and it just was like, there. I don't know how that guy is going to play another game this season. If he does, it's going to be incredible. But yeah, I mean, last year you get the undefeated Florida State, and they don't even make the playoffs because their quarterback gets hurt. Georgia, their quarterback gets hurt. It's like, 2 seed, which I know how it works. You win the SEC, like all that stuff, like automatic. But still, like, I don't know. You got both your starting quarterback and your backup quarterback hurt. Like,
to be fair, Georgia did beat Texas, and they had a touchdown drive with their backup.
Right, but Florida State beat everybody else too. They were literally undefeated.
They didn't beat Texas.
Who is Texas beat though?
But okay. I'm just saying they won the conference championship game. I don't think you can dock. Are you going to put Boise ahead of Georgia or Arizona State above Georgia after that?
I don't know. It's the principle of the thing, Zach. It's the principle of the thing.
Well, but so just to push back a little bit, everybody was using the principle of the thing with when Georgia lost to Alabama. They slid out of the playoff, and everyone was saying, "Oh, see, that's what should happen to SMU." And I'm like, guys, Georgia lost to Alabama. Alabama was going to be the 4 seed the entire time because Texas had beaten them head to head. There were 2 undefeated teams above them. There's no comparison, and I think similarly. Not to debate you too hard on this. I don't know if there's much of a comparison between Florida State and Georgia. And
I get it. But I still think that if the committee, like this is my thing. I think the committee was consistent this year. Now, do I agree with everything in their consistency? Not necessarily, but I think they were consistent, which that's all I'm asking for with a committee, is that you set a precedent and then you follow that precedent. Now, I want that to be the same precedent every year, though. Like, we could have Ward Manuel this year say, well, we're going to be consistent about this. But then next year, we could have another committee say, well, we're going to be consistent about this. So for me, like, I'm glad the committee was consistent, but I want this to remain being consistent for the rest of the time too. And SEC teams can cry and whine all they want about, well, we're just not going to play anybody in the out of conference this year. It's like, well, you didn't really play anybody in the out of conference this year either, and you just lost the teams in your own conference. So unless you want to stop, unless you want to go down to 7 conference games, like by all means, like that's my biggest thing is like, and even this year, like Alabama, excuse me, Alabama can't complain too much because you know what happened when Alabama played Mercer, Zach? They jumped they jumped Miami. Miami was on a bye. Alabama beat Mercer and they jumped them. They beat an FCS team and they jumped another team in the rankings.
It's just
It's
so
ridiculous.
dumb. Yeah. I think it's important to like the committee has a difficult job. And I'll be honest, and I know this is probably a controversial take. I think this is actually the best the committee's ever done in the year, like in the 11 years that we've had a playoff, which is not saying much because they've been pretty bad most years.
Getting the teams in, yes.
Yeah.
Like, do I think Alabama deserved to be in? No, but I would argue Miami deserved to be in over SMU.
Yes. Yeah. And I thought well, we talked about this last week. I thought that Miami being under Alabama was garbage.
Yeah.
Like you either had
And
to
that's
put
why I thought Alabama was going to get the 11th spot because they put Miami under them. So I'm like, oh, well, SMU. But they decided they were not going to penalize teams for making the conference championship game. And
I thought that was right. Sorry, I cut you off.
no. I agree. Like, I think it's right too. But at the same time, like, again, that sets the precedent that I don't really want, which is just win your games. It doesn't matter who you play. So like I am making fun of the SEC a little bit, but at the same time, like I'm kind of agreeing with them where it's like, well, if you just had a really easy, I mean, i.e. Texas, if you just had a really easy conference schedule and you had a really easy out of conference schedule too, you're going to automatically get the 5th or 6th seed if you lose your conference title game, which as we know, the 5th or 6th seed is the best seed in the playoffs. Oregon and Georgia are going to have to either play Ohio State, arguably the most talented team in the country, who just has a major coaching problem right now, or Tennessee, who has one of the best defensive lines in the country, and then Georgia is going to have to either play Indiana, one of the most like best coached teams in the country. Maybe they don't have the talent across the board that other teams have, but it's one of the best coached teams in the country, or Notre Dame, one of the hottest teams in the country right now. Like, if you ask me, Penn State and Texas, they have much better roads to the Final Four there than Georgia and Oregon do. And even though they only have one game, that's going to be a really, really difficult game that Penn State and Texas aren't going to have to face until they get to the Final Four round.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if they can switch it. I mean, I think you could just step in and just switch it yourself. I think they need to get rid of the automatic buy. Not the automatic bids, but the automatic buy.
I agree.
For conference championships. Like I think
I
if you
like.
did that,
Oh, good. Sorry.
I think if you did that, that fixes a lot of this.
I like the automatic bids because I think the automatic bids increases parity. So like this very first year, yes, you have some issues with like, should Arizona State actually be in it? I think they should. I'm just using it as an example. Like some people are going to question, should Arizona State actually be in it? But guess what? There are going to be more good players that go to the Big 12 now because they're like, well, they get a guaranteed team in the playoffs. And there's going to be more good players that are going to say, you know what, maybe I will go to a G5 school because, and I'm not talking about 5 stars, I'm just talking about like good players. There could be some blue chip players that go to the group of 5 because they say, well, you know what, I'm going to, do a good job there. Maybe I'll transfer up. And in the meantime, if we have a really good season and we're the highest ranked G5 champion, we get ourselves in the playoffs. So I do think that increases parity. But at the same time, these auto buys and stuff that you're talking about, it makes the playoffs look so weird and it screws up seeding so much.
Yeah. I will say though, the matchups are awesome, right? Like Clemson, Texas, SMU, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Tennessee, Ohio State is phenomenal. And then you might get either Clemson or Texas against Arizona State. Like that's a cool matchup. You're going to get Boise against, either SMU or Penn State. Like that's a fun. You're going to get Georgia and either Indiana or Notre Dame, and you might get the Ohio State Oregon rematch in the quarters. Like, so I understand what you're saying, and I and some level I agree with you, but there's also a part of me that's like, seeding is meant to be a reward for your season in terms of like what you get. And for instance, like Oregon, like everybody's talking about Oregon's tough path, but they get a bye. Like, and after a really brutal season, that's actually really good for them. Like to get an extra like 10 days, and they get to watch Ohio State, Tennessee and be like, okay, what is a good team? What is a good team doing to each other? Like, so they get that data point. Like there are advantages, but also the reality is if you look at any other sport, there are often disadvantages, even if you are the higher seed. And you see it in the NFL playoffs, you see it in NBA playoffs. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying like these the perceived unfairness, like it happens everywhere and in every
Yeah.
sport. And so I think we need to change parts of the system to make it more enviable to be the number one seed. But also like I don't lose too much sleep about it, because to win a national championship, you got to beat good teams.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I look at it and I'm like, okay, if I could pick here, which seed would I rather be? 6, 5, 2, or 1? Like if I had the choice here, which one would I choose? I understand 1 and 2 get buys. But like I said before, you also have to play one of the most talented teams in the country, a team with one of the best defensive lines in the country, one of the best coach teams in the country, or the hottest team in the country. On the other end, you get 6 and 5, where it's like, okay, I could play the ACC champion, and we just know the ACC hasn't been as good this year, or the ACC runner-up champion, which the ACC hasn't been as good this year, and then a Big 12 champion, which the Big 12 hasn't been as good this year, or a Group of 5 champion, which the Group of 5 is not as good as the Big 10 or the SEC. And like I just look at it that way, where I say, what is more likely? My team beats
yeah,
SMU and Boise State, or my team beats Notre Dame in one
yeah,
game.
no,
You
I
know.
think that's fair.
So,
I think that's
but
very
I'm not
fair.
saying you're wrong. I'm just saying like there's different ways to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny. I'm reacting because a lot of people are like, with the unveiling of this, are like, the system's terrible. This is
Yeah.
stupid. The committee's, and it's like, hold on, like get out of your feels for a minute. Like, and you're not there. That's not what you're doing. You're like
Right.
looking at it analytically, and I think there are reasons to look at this and be like, we should probably change this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, but it's, yeah, Penn State in particular got a really fun draw, or really really favorable pathway, like for sure. At the same time, I'll just put it out there: if Oregon beats either Ohio State or Tennessee, and then beats Texas, and then beats Georgia, like that's a historic national championship run, and like nobody can take that away from them.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So, I
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's a good point.
but
All
but
right.
I think you have a very like, at the same time, Ducks fans are like, but we want Boise, and I understand that.
Exactly. We can argue about it all day long, but what we're gonna do next is we are gonna hit a commercial break, and then after that commercial break, Zach and I are going to predict the college football playoffs. So we'll be right back. Stay with us. Have you ever wanted to watch all 22 film, that film the coaches watch? Well, now you can. Introducing the Coaches Film Room. Over at Minutes to Sports, former college coach Zack Smith breaks down film of the most relevant teams in college football with a bit of a Big Ten lead. It's not free, so you'll need to sign up for the Colonel tier, which is $25 a month, but I can attest to you that it is far more worth it than that. With about 4 to 8 games per week, this is worth so much more money, not to mention Zach's analysis, making you a smarter football fan. Go check it out. The links are in the description, minutestosports.com. You won't be sorry. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, Zach and I are going to take a chance. Take a chance.
Make a
I'm
change.
predicting the college football
Oh
playoffs,
boy.
not predicting the seeds like everybody else has been doing. No, we are going to try and predict who will win the college football playoffs with the bracket that we have now. So these are very loose predictions. I would say, we'll do like previews and stuff like that for the Big Ten games at the very least and look at all that stuff. But Zach, I think we need to start with Clemson and Texas. They are there in the bottom left. Clemson, no ranked wins all year or Texas, I apologize. Texas, no ranked wins all year, but they still get the SEC benefit of being the second highest ranked team out of the SEC and out of the top four. I guess they would be what, third? Because Georgia would move up to second. I don't know what the rankings were. Bottom line, they're fifth, and they get to play the 12th seed, which is Clemson, which won their way in by winning the ACC title game. What are your thoughts on this game, and who are you picking?
So I think people forget that while Dabo Sweeney has been kind of seen as a castaway from the modern world of college football, and is kind of the old, he's like the get off my lawn guy right now in college football. He's still a darn good coach. And he does have some pretty good talent on this team. And I think you saw it show up in that SMU game, especially early on. The defensive line, strong. The offense is inconsistent, but they've got some playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Um, people don't want to admit it, but against in their game against Georgia, their defense held up pretty well, and then I think Georgia took, they finally pounded and pounded and pounded, and then broke their back. Texas, on the other hand, people have said this in the chat. They have looked limited, and I think people look at their wins against Texas A&M. They look at the wins against Michigan, and I think they're like, oh yeah, Texas is a really good team. I'll be honest. I think they have good receivers, really good receivers, and I think their defense has been really good. Quinn Ewers has been like good, like just good. He hasn't been elite. The offensive line has been good, like not elite, like everybody wants you to think. The running backs have been good, not elite. And Clemson has to go to Texas, which I don't like. I like Texas is a good stadium. It's a good environment. I don't think it's like that intimidating, and I don't think Clemson's going to be intimidated. And I think Clemson's going to win.
Um, I definitely agree with your points about Dabo being there before. They're going to be confident. This is a dangerous 12 seed. Just based, not so much based on the season, what we saw this year, because Clemson does have obvious deficiencies on their team. But you're correct. I mean, Sark has never won a playoff game. He's only ever been to the playoffs once. Last year, he lost to Kalen DeBoer. Correct me if I'm wrong. He may have been to the
Yep.
playoffs with Saban when he was at Alabama, but as a head coach, he's never won a playoff game. So you look at this, you have Dabo Sweeney, who has won multiple playoff games. He's won multiple national championships. So
Yep.
he's going to know what needs to happen. He's going to know how to prep the practice and do all that stuff. I For me, it's kind of 50-50 right now. Like, I see a lot of what people are saying about Klubnik and him being able to torch this Texas defense. I still don't really like Texas's secondary. I feel like that was an issue for him last year. It's kind of an issue again for him this year. So I think they have that opportunity. But boy, I mean, Texas, they just have bigger, stronger guys. Like what everybody was saying about, and I know Clemson is recruited well too. So I'm not saying like these two teams are on the same level. I'm just saying it's similar. Like what people were saying about Ohio State, Indiana, when it was like, oh, Ohio State is just so much bigger, stronger, faster than Indiana. Indiana will never win the game. I'm not saying that it's exactly that, but I do think that Texas has better athletes on their team. And so if Texas does win this game, I'm not confident it's a Steve Sarkisian thing or like an out coaching the other team thing. I think it's just going to be Texas is bigger, faster, stronger. But I think that says a lot about this Texas team because Quinn Ewers is supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, right? He was ranked that high.
Yep.
I wouldn't say it's impossible if to see Arch Manning in the second half of this game, and Arch Manning brings Texas back to a win. Like I fully agree with you. If Quinn Ewers is starting, I like Clemson to win this. But Texas still has Arch Manning in their back pocket, who I think is more athletic, who I think has made better decisions this season, and who I think could actually give Texas a chance to win. So if Texas sticks with Quinn Ewers all game, yeah, I probably agree with you. We go with Clemson. But if they do the right thing and they switch to Arch Manning, I think Texas has a good shot in this one. So, but I don't think they're going to go to Arch Manning. So let's pick Clemson.
I like it. Let's do it. Upset
Boom.
time.
Are we going to pick another
SEC
upset?
is out.
There we go. Tennessee at Ohio State. I heard that the weather forecast for this game looks like it's going to be the high of 42 so far. Now, this is weeks in advance, so who knows? That'll apparently change. But that's like midday when you get to 8 o'clock at night and probably going into 11, 12 o'clock at night. Around that time, too, you're going to be looking at freezing weather for sure. And this Tennessee team was the team that didn't have big enough heaters for their entire team when it was 52 degrees.
Yeah.
Out. So, as far as I'm concerned, listen, I'm kind of down on Ryan Day right now. Not the biggest Ryan Day fan in the world. I think he, lost the game, but as far as I'm concerned, Tennessee coming up north, playing a cold weather game at night when when 52 degrees was too cold for them, on top of Ohio State just being that much more talented, I'm probably going to go with Ohio State in this one, Zach.
So John Jacobs is wondering how we're going to show the bracket picks if we disagree. And this is where we disagree.
Well, we'll work it out just like we did
Yeah,
before. We had things we disagreed on when we did our
that's fair.
big thing.
That's fair. You are down on Ryan Day. I'm not sure I'm going to spend another dollar on Ohio State until they fire Ryan Day. Listen, Ohio State's the most talented team, like has the most talent, I think, in the country. But their coaching staff is like equivalent to an 8th grade reading level. They don't know they don't know what to do
Might
with
be a bit of a stretch, but I understand where you're coming from.
well, at least against Michigan.
And
I
this is not Michigan.
Yeah, it's the SEC, and he's over against the SEC. So I, I I have a hard time, especially with Tennessee's defensive line, thinking how do they fix the offensive line for Ohio State enough to be able to be balanced. Um, that's I think the biggest matchup in this game. I think it's low scoring, but I don't think Ohio State wins a game in the playoff. I think Tennessee beats them.
Well, you know what? Here's what we'll do. We will leave it up to the people. I will make
Oh,
a poll. They'll vote, and we'll
oh,
give them a few minutes to vote, and then whoever they vote for, that's what we'll do. How does that sound?
all
Does
right.
that sound
That
fair?
sounds great. I think that's fair. That's
Okay.
fair.
All right. Go ahead and start talking about Penn State SMU while I make the poll.
You know, I don't know a ton about SMU if I'm being quite honest. Jennings, their quarterback, is he's a dynamic player. Um, they have a good offense. I just think what we saw with Penn State and and their offensive output, I think is going to be too much. Plus, you're at Penn State, which is I know it's going to be a noon game, but even a noon game in Happy Valley is pretty it's pretty raucous in that stadium. And so I think SMU puts up a good fight, but I think by the end of the third quarter, Penn State gets a healthy 10-point lead and is able to coast to a win in the fourth quarter.
I agree. I think that this is probably my easiest pick of all the ones in the beginning. I'm going to go with Penn State. I don't think it's necessarily close. I'm not trying to disrespect SMU here, but I think Penn State is a better version of Clemson, and SMU lost to Clemson. So, and honestly, you know, Dabo 5 years ago, definitely better than James Franklin this year. I don't know. I mean, he's got the experience, so I'd give him the edge there, but still think James Franklin, as much as people kind of give him his crap in big games and stuff like that, this SMU team doesn't feel like a big enough game for him to lose it. So I'm going to go with Penn State as well.
Yep.
All right, Zach, I think this is arguably the most kind of fun storyline. This will be the most fun if the upset happens for me
Yes.
in this
Yeah.
one, is if Indiana beats Notre Dame
Yeah.
in this one. And I got to say, I think it could happen. Listen,
Yep.
Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Notre Dame has to run the ball in order to be successful. Indiana's defense is a good defense. This is not a defense that is going to just lie down and get ran all over. Let's not forget, if you take out the sack yards, Indiana outrushed Ohio State in that game. And I think that Indiana could stop Notre Dame's run. I think that Riley Leonard is going to have some problems passing the ball as well. And what did we say against USC, Zach? They had to finally face a passing offense. You look at Louisville, USC, and Indiana. Zach, which one of those is the best passing offense?
Indiana.
Curtis Rourke. Give me Curtis Rourke. 4 touchdown passes in this game. Give me Give me 30 plus points, hanging them on Notre Dame. Notre Dame keeps it close, but Indiana runs away with it at the end.
Did you see Marcus Freeman in his his playoff press conference thing?
No, I didn't see it. What did he say?
They asked him about Kurt Signetti. He's like, "Oh yeah, I didn't know much about him, so I googled him." I was like, "That's well done, Marcus.
That's funny.
I appreciate that." Um, I'm gonna shock John Jacobs here and agree with Jr.
Kent
I think
State?
yes, Kent State is gonna win the playoff. Indiana's gonna beat Notre Dame. I
Nice.
I think the fact that they got Indiana in a game in Indiana actually really goes to Indiana's favor. Because
I
I'll tell
agree.
you right now, like Notre Dame's not going to have that. They're not going to have nearly as much of a home field advantage because Indiana fans will, I mean, they will flock to South Bend in this game. So I think the other thing is that Notre Dame, like they're big up front, really good running game, but they are a bit one dimensional. And like Jeremiah Love is a really good running back. Riley Leonard is a really good running threat at quarterback. But if Indiana can stack the box and force them to throw, you're talking about a team that turns you over. You're talking about a team that they are going to be efficient and they're going to force Notre Dame to not be efficient. And if they can slow down the run game for Notre Dame, it actually could get ugly very quickly because Notre Dame can't I don't
Yeah.
think Notre Dame can score. I mean, they can score fast with the run game, but I just don't think like Indiana's defense, I think, will be able to hold up against that run game at least enough.
I agree. I think that like there's going to be a lot of people in this one that say Notre Dame is just that much better and all that stuff, and I get that. I mean, brand like you look at the brand, and Notre Dame should win on this game on brand alone. But I mean, Kirk Sidnetti is the more experienced coach. Marcus Freeman, as much as I think that he has had a good year this year, and I've been impressed with him in a lot of ways, he still lost to Northern Illinois. And I think I think Indiana playing that game at Ohio State, having to go through the crowd noise and everything going on there, I just think it's going to be really good for them. I think that it's going to be a really good opportunity for them to get better. So, and yeah, I know there's a lot of people that say Notre Dame like we're sleeping on them and stuff, but I've yet to hear a good argument about what Notre Dame does that is going to beat Indiana. Like they beat up on a whole lot of really bad teams. And I know Indiana has done the same, but Indiana has shown that they have the ability to throw the ball and do a really good job with it. They were able to stop the run against Ohio State. They were able to turn Ohio State over in the red zone, stop them in the red zone, which is something that only one other team has been able to do this year, and that's Michigan. And I think that people know Michigan has a pretty good defense. Although they're not great this year, they do have a good defense. And so I look at it and I'm like, I don't know what Notre Dame has done to make me believe that they are just this high and above team over Indiana where they're 100% going to win and there's no chance for Indiana. I'm not saying people picking Notre Dame. I understand if you pick Notre Dame, I get it.
Sure.
But I just don't think it's the lopsided Notre Dame win that a lot of other people think it is. So, um,
I agree.
let's see.
Did we get the poll results
Yes, the
for?
poll 62% Ohio State. So the
I will
people
go
agree
with the
with me.
people.
Sorry, Zach.
No, no, no,
It's,
no, no. I want the people to be right. I really want
it's
the
okay.
people to be right.
It's okay. We're probably gonna pick Oregon in the next game anyway. So all
We'll
right,
see.
we just
We'll
got done
see.
talking about Indiana. Let's talk about Indiana, Georgia. This is the big one. Zach, your thoughts?
Um, so I think Indiana runs into the bigger, faster, stronger problem here. But I like I think the Carson Beck injury really matters. Cuz like Beck has not been great, but the backup came in, he had a really nice drive. I'm trying to remember the guy's name.
Gunnar Stockton,
Gunner Stockton. And
the most
he had,
Georgia quarterback name I could ever think of in the world.
besides Stetson Bennett. Um
Well, that too, but this one has gun in it. So
That's fair. That's fair. Um, he led a great drive, opening drive, and then he looked exceedingly average, if not below average, for the rest of the game. And I think Indiana could do something similar to what Georgia Tech did to Georgia. Like I could see where Georgia kind of sleepwalks a little bit. They're like, "Oh, poor little Indiana, we're gonna kill them." And I think Indiana might take advantage of that.
yeah,
Now, at the end of the day, like I really want to pick Indiana on that one, but I think I'd probably go Georgia. But I think we're left with more questions with Georgia, and I think we're left thinking, wow, Indiana really did deserve to be here. So
yeah. I
but
mean,
I have Georgia.
yeah, no, I have to pick Georgia just because they are more talented. But I do believe in Indiana. Like I think exactly what you're saying is correct. Like not Stetson. Stetson was good. Carson Beck has not been good this season. He struggled against Georgia Tech, and to me, if Georgia Tech can take Georgia to 8 overtimes, and I know there's a lot of people saying like, oh, well, that won't happen. They won't do that in a big game. Look what Alabama did. The Alabama team that scored 3 points on Oklahoma put up 41 points on Georgia, was blowing them out in the first half. Now I give Georgia credit because Georgia came back in that game, but like I have to pick Georgia because of the talent and the size and everything that they have on their team. I don't feel like you can pick against Georgia in this one, but at the same time, like I would not be surprised at all if Indiana wins this game. I'm not going to pick it to
Yeah.
happen, but it would not surprise me at all. And anybody saying that like there's no way you can ever pick Indiana in this game, like go back and watch some of these Georgia games. Watch the Kentucky game. Watch the
Yep.
Georgia Tech game. Watch the Florida game. Watch all of these games because they have played below their level game like time in and time out. Like you thought Ohio State against Michigan was bad? Go watch Georgia against Kentucky. Go watch Georgia against Georgia Tech. Like they played way below their level, and I can't really put a finger on it. With Ohio State, I can put a finger on it. It's Ryan Day, like him and his coaching staff. With Georgia, I can't really put a finger on it other than like, I mean, I guess quarterback is probably the thing, but who knows? Maybe the third
Well,
string will be better.
and even the receiving core, like they really miss Brock Bowers. Like that, I think that's a big part of it is they don't have a real go-to guy who's both explosive and reliable. Like Arian Smith is a talented wide receiver, but he has so many drops.
Yeah,
And I will say this: the one danger for Indiana in this is that Georgia is getting a lot of rest, and
yeah,
so like sometimes that's an advantage for a lesser team, but sometimes it's not. And I think with Georgia, like Kirby Smart knows how to deal with layoff. So like I think that's the one that's the danger where it could be a 10-point game to like a 28-point game. Um but I would probably pick it closer than I would um a blowout.
yeah. I agree. All right, Penn State, Boise State, Zach. I kind of feel like Penn State with Georgia in this one, not like the bad side of it, but like the better talent, everything else type of thing. But at the end of the day, Boise State has Ashton Genty, who had a fantastic game against Oregon. The only reason Oregon won that game, which I'm not saying Oregon deserve to win the game. Don't come at me, Oregon fans. But the reason that Oregon won that game was because of special teams. Like Boise State played well enough to win that game on offense and defense. It was special teams where Oregon just exploded and had a punt return and a kick return touchdown to win them the game. Again, Oregon won the game. I'm not saying they didn't or they didn't deserve it, but I look at that and I say, like, Boise State, to me, they could hang with Penn State in this one, especially if Penn State is not able to stop Ashton Genty in this one. I do think they should be able to stop the pass. I do think they should be able to have the pass rush to be able to make things uncomfortable back there for that Maddox kid. What is it, Maddox or Madden or something like that? Yeah, it's like an alliteration, first name, last name. But so I'm gonna pick Penn State to win this one because they should, but similar to Indiana, Georgia, not for the same exact reasons, but similarly, I would not be surprised if Boise State won because of Ashton Genty, and if he just has that legendary game, they would be able to win this one.
Yeah, it's Maddox Madsen is the quarterback. I'll be honest. I think what I'm concerned about for Boise is, they faced an Oregon team that was having offensive line issues early in the season. But you look at the rest of their schedule, and they really haven't played a team that knows how to score. And I just wonder if Penn State saw the blueprint, say, hey, we're gonna run, set up the pass, be aggressive. Boise, especially down the stretch, has not been great. Like, struggled against Wyoming, won 17-13. Struggled to beat Oregon State, but Oregon State's bad. I thought they were a little sluggish against UNLV, and I think Penn State's playing really confident football right now, and I'd have Penn State going through as well.
I thought you may say that, so that's why I just went ahead and said
Yeah.
Penn State there. All right, Oregon, Ohio State. I think Oregon is just as good as they were when they beat Ohio State the first time. I think Ohio State offensive line got dominated in that first game, and I think their offensive line is worse than it was before. I don't trust Ryan Day, and yeah, Oregon wins.
Yeah. I'll just say this.
I feel bad for Oregon fans. I feel like there is so little we break down of Oregon, but the fact is they're just the best team in the country right now. Like, I don't know how much more there is to say. Like, they are the best team in the country, and they have the most confident coach in the country. What else do you want to say, right?
Yeah. So here's my one but.
Okay.
And
are you going to fight for Ohio State after you just said Ohio State was going to lose to Tennessee?
No, I'm not going to fight for Ohio State.
Okay.
I'm going to pick Oregon. But here's where, if I'm an Oregon fan, I'm concerned if I get Ohio State. And I think there's a concern if they get Tennessee as well. But I'll give you the scenario for Ohio State, since we were talking about Ohio State, Oregon. For one, Ohio State doesn't have to do a silent count anymore because they'll be at a neutral site.
That's true.
It'll be at the Rose Bowl.
Very true.
And Ohio State fans will travel to the Rose Bowl.
A lot of Ohio State fans live near the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. So it will not be Autzen Stadium super loud. It won't be. The other thing is that if Ohio State has learned, particularly Ryan Day has learned from his mistake with Michigan, which I'm not confident he has, but if he has, the blueprint would be similar to how you would beat Michigan, at least offensively, which is tire out their defensive tackles, make them run. And you have the talent to do that. The other thing is that, again, this game is at the Rose Bowl. This is the type of temperature and weather and the fast track that Ohio State thrives on, particularly offensively. So, I think things are there. I think to say, well, there's no way Ohio State would win a rematch between them and Oregon. I think you and I would agree on this. I think from a talent perspective, I would not be surprised if Ohio State would be favored in that game.
I mean, they were going to be favored in the Big Ten championship by 3.5 if they made it.
Yeah. And real quick, before I say anything about Oregon, someone said it's going to be 85,000 Oregon fans. No, it's not.
No,
Not
it's
if
not.
Ohio State gets there. Now, if
No.
Tennessee gets there, it might be. But
It's going
Ohio
to be
State travels.
50-50. Oregon, Ohio State. It's going to be
Yeah,
50-50.
Ohio State fans travel better than anybody else in the country.
Yeah.
Like it will not be 85-15. I can guarantee you that. That being said, I'm picking Oregon. I'd probably pick them by double digits because I don't trust Ryan Day. I think Dan Lanning is right now the hottest coach in the country.
Yeah, and I mean, Brian Myers could very much so be right. We're judging Ryan Day on the Buckeyes off the Michigan game, and like the other 11 games didn't happen, and the Bucks are a real threat to win it all. Brian, I totally agree that Ohio State has the most talented roster in the country, and they could definitely win it all. I'm not trying to say they couldn't win it all. I'm just saying, like not every time. Ryan Day has done better in big games this year, but we still are seeing the lapses. And for me, the most damning thing that I saw about Ryan Day in that Michigan game was not that he was stubborn and wouldn't get away from the run. I said this about Brad Underwood during the Illinois game when he kept playing Ben Hummerkaus. Ben Hummerkaus went 1 for 9 from three, but he kept him in the game. And I know this is a basketball channel, baseball, football show. But just hold on for a second. He kept playing this player that was 1 for 9 shooting the three. He comes into the game later, or he comes into the press conference later on, and they say, "Why did you keep this player in the game?" He said, "Because I believed in my guy, and I was going to lose the game believing in my players." Rather than lose the game not believing in them. And I respect that. I think that's a good answer, and I think that's a really good way to instill confidence in your guys. Unfortunately, that's not what Ryan Day was doing trying to run the ball against Michigan. What he was doing was he was trying to control the narrative. He was trying to go against the narrative, similar to what he was doing against Notre Dame, and this time bit him in the butt. And for me, like, I don't want my coach to be so concerned about the narrative that it's affecting his game plan. Like, is there going to be a narrative that starts about Oregon and Ohio State leading into this game? I totally agree. It should not affect Ryan Day, but we've seen it affect him now in this Michigan game. And I mean, it could have affected him during that Notre Dame game last year too. So for me, it's not so much that I don't trust the coaching staff because I think they're bad coaches. It's just like for me, it felt like Ryan Day put himself above the team in that instance, and I just don't know if I can believe in a coach who did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I hear where you're coming from, Brian, and I agree. Ohio State has some of the best players in the country. They have the talent to win it all. I just don't know if they have the coaching and the head coach to do that. So
Yep.
if I'm wrong, I will gladly be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please,
And
please tell me how wrong I am if I'm wrong.
yeah, we will be exceedingly joyful if we are wrong on this.
Mr. Bucknut says Day is going to win the Natty. Telling you now, we beat Tennessee. It's over. Oregon is fretting to see us. They know it. We know it. Mr. Bucknuts, nothing would make me happier. I am not picking against Ohio State because I want to see them lose. I'm just trying to give my honest opinion here.
Yep.
But nothing would make me happier than that.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say nothing. Another kid would make me pretty happy, but not yet though. I got two little ones. Like give me a couple years. It's mayhem in my house right now. All right, Zach. We don't need to learn more about my family life. Clemson, Arizona State.
I think that'd be an entertaining podcast, actually. JR's life.
JR's family life huddle.
Man, it's I. Am I buying the Arizona State hype too much? Am I buying Scatabo? Yeah, I am. I am. Give me Arizona State. Arizona State going to the semis because I think people forget and I didn't realize this. Their quarterback was out for their bad loss at Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
When he's in the game, like Arizona State's a really good football team. And I think Clemson's good. I think they have I think they have good personnel. But I think Arizona State's playing about as well as anybody in the country right now. Give me the Sun
Yeah, I
Devils.
mean it's hard to tell with the Big 12 just because not the most talented teams in the country are there, but they're definitely playing very loose, very aggressive, and it's a very dangerous team. So as far as I'm concerned, a team like Clemson that yes, they do have the experience and stuff like that to defeat Texas. I'm not saying that I would pick Arizona State to beat Texas, but with them playing as loose and as aggressive and the confidence that Kenny Dillingham has, I mean he's just a young Dan Lanning at this point.
Mm.
Which is why I'm so excited with this next matchup coming up. Kenny Dillingham and Dan Lanning, those two going against each other. Like I'm picking Arizona State in this one because I think they have the belief. I think that, you could talk about they don't have maybe the talent or the bigger guys as Clemson does. But like I said, Texas has the bigger, stronger guys than Clemson in my mind. And Clemson, I
Mhm.
have them winning this one, the one against Texas. And I don't think the bigger, stronger, faster is going to be that much better for Clemson over Arizona State. I could see Arizona State winning this game, so I'm going to pick that.
Yep. Just
Um, oh,
one.
one
I
more
was gonna
thing.
say
Go ahead.
one statistic. Arizona State is ranked 12th in Sagarin. They are 3-0 against Sagarin top 30 teams. Clemson, they are 1-1 against top 10 teams in Sagarin. 1-3 against top 30 teams in the Sagarin ratings. Arizona State better strength of schedule, 39 to Clemson's 51. Uh, in a lot of ways, every metric actually favors Arizona State in that matchup.
Good for Arizona State. All right,
Mhm.
Arizona State, Oregon. Unfortunately, I think this is where the magic
Yep.
dies.
Yep.
I think Oregon wins this game. I think that Cam Scatabo, the whole story, everything's fantastic. The only regret I have is that we only see Oregon State once in this playoffs. But I think that I think the rest is going to really benefit them, even though that'll be a hard fought game against Ohio State. As much as I'm down on Ohio State right now, I know it's going to be a blowout. I think that they'll have a really tough game against Ohio State, and that'll be a really hard fought game. But at the end of the day, Arizona State, I I think this is where bigger, faster, stronger gets to Arizona State. And even if I mean, we saw it with Ashton Jeanty. Even if Cam Scatabo has an amazing game, I just think Oregon's the better overall team. I think they have better pass rush. I think they're better coached. I think that um, I don't think there's anything that Arizona State does better than Oregon. Your thoughts,
Yeah.
Zach? Maybe running
Well,
the ball, but
and I think unlike Clemson, like Oregon has answers everywhere. Like, so if one thing's not working, they'll find a way to exploit you in a different way. Whether it's the running game, whether it's Tez Johnson, whether it's Evan Stewart, whether it's the tight ends, Sadiq and oh gosh, the other Ferguson. Is it Ferguson? Is the
Ferguson, yeah,
the other tight end?
it's
Um,
such a good tight end.
yeah, and I mean they just are so multiple and they're so efficient. And Gabriel, I think Gabriel's playing at a Heisman level right now. So
I think
I
Gabriel's the best quarterback in the country.
yeah yeah. So I like Oregon to get to the finals.
I do as well. I do as well. Penn State or Georgia, Zach. I think Georgia should win this game, similar to the Indiana thing. But I think Penn State has better high level talent. I think that Penn State could hang with them in this one, and I think Penn State could do the unthinkable for me. The thing is, I think Kirby is kind of a magician in these big games, and he's won a lot of games in the playoffs. As much as I do think Penn State has a really good chance to win this game, and I don't know if Georgia is going to play well enough to win it. It's kind of similar to Indiana, where I feel like I have to pick Georgia just because they have the team, they have the ability, they have the coach. We'll just see if they show up that day. But I'm going to pick Georgia in this one, but it's not a very confident pick in Georgia.
I am very confident that Penn State's going to get their first signature win against the SEC with James Franklin because I don't think Georgia has a quarterback that will be ready to get enough offense generated. I A lot of people looked at the SEC championship game last week or last night. It was like, SEC the national championship preview. What I saw were two teams that hit hard but are very like very not great.
They have flaws.
Yeah,
They have big
like
flaws.
yeah, big flaws. And what I saw with Penn State last night was, despite the fact that they were a bit overmatched, they rose to the occasion. And I listen, people are saying Georgia does not need a lot of offense to win. Probably not. But here's the problem. I don't think Drew Aller is going to make the same mistakes that Quinn Ewers makes. I think Penn State has better running backs. And I don't know if I know it's going to sound weird. There's a lot that you can do with a tight end. They were talking about it on the broadcast last night with the Big Ten championship game. There's a lot you can do with Tyler Warren that can frustrate the heck out of a defense. And so I think Georgia is flawed. I think they're more flawed than people want to admit. I'm confident Penn State makes the national championship game and gives us a rematch of the Big Ten championship.
Well, Zach, we find ourselves at another crossroads, and so what we will have to do is we will have to go to the chat. Chat, let us know. Do you think Penn State or Georgia? I just put the poll up there. We'll give you guys here a couple minutes to vote on that, and then we'll take whoever you guys vote on. But I can't say I disagree with you, Zach, that like Penn State does have a chance, but like I just look at the highest ceiling level of a team, and the highest ceiling level of the team goes to Georgia.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just think it's funny. Georgia, I think, is actually similar to Ohio State in a lot of ways, where I'm like, and I think you said that earlier too. Like,
their issue is more quarterback, and Ohio State's issue is more coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Georgia doesn't have a quarterback walking through that door that makes me confident. Just like Ohio State doesn't have a coach that's walking through the door that I'm confident in. But a coach like,
I don't know. Urban Meyer could walk through that door.
No, he ain't coming back.
No, he's not coming back. It's a joke.
Yeah.
All right. I think Penn State's running away with this. So we're
Are they really?
Penn State. Yeah. Congratulations to Penn State. You have made it to the national championship and JR and Zach's hypothetical playoff prediction. And we get, oh man, if this happens and it's Penn State and Oregon in the national championship, I am just going to be elated. I will be so happy, and SEC fans will never want to talk to me again in their lives. You thought it was bad when I bragged about an incoming Big Ten team and a Big Ten team in the national championship last year. Oh boy, just wait for a Big Ten team versus a Big Ten team in the actual national championship of a 12-team playoff, defeating an SEC champ along the way. Zach, who wins this game? Oregon, Penn State.
I gotta go Oregon.
Me too.
I think they're the best team in the country.
I do too. Congratulations, Oregon. You've won the national championship. For me, I do think that Penn State, if they correct some of those issues, they could win this one. I'm not discounting it at all and saying like this is a foregone conclusion and Oregon wins it all and Penn State doesn't have a chance. Penn State definitely has a chance. We all watched that game where they almost won that game. But to me, you have to have the wide receivers. And unfortunately, I don't think Penn State has the wide receivers. I really like what they're able to do with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen and Tyler Warren, all that stuff. But at a certain point, offense was not meant to be played throwing only to tight ends and running backs and Harrison Wallace. Like, you have to throw to some other guys as well. And for me, I think that's their biggest deficiency. What could have been if they would have kept, well, I don't know, Keandre Lambert-Smith. I don't know if he would have been much better. Sounds like he didn't do so well at Auburn this year. But if they would have been able to get a high-level wide receiver out of the portal or something like that, I don't know. But I mean, if you get to the national championship, I know it'll hurt Penn State fans losing it, but in the first year of the 12-team playoffs, that would be a really, really good year for Penn State.
Well, and I think to that point, think of how it changes perception if Penn State does get past Georgia. Like that, like the
Yeah.
big knock on him on Franklin has been he can't win the big one. That's as big as it gets, right? Like it's Georgia has been in many ways the Darth Vader of the college football landscape the past few years, right? They won two national championships in 2021, 2022. They still have the best recruiting classes. They probably have, aside from Ohio State, the most talent on their roster. And they have the, is it the only coach? No, that there's two. How many coaches, active coaches, have a national championship right now? Two, Dabo Sweeney and Kirby
Dabo and
Smart.
Kirby.
And so, like, to do that,
Because Ed Orgeron isn't coaching, and Nick Saban won the race.
yep,
Sorry,
yep,
go ahead.
yeah. So, like, I think, I, I think as compromised as Georgia is or has been because the quarterback position, it's still a big win. It'd still be a big win if they get there. So,
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. We could talk about it more, but we do need to talk about the bowl games as well, Zach. And I don't know if this will be the longest conversation in the world, but it'll be good to look at. So, everybody, that is our playoff prediction. Just reaction right away. Not saying that this is what we will be picking when we do previews for games later on. I'm sure there will be more to think about, more to talk about when we get there. But these are just kind of our reactions for now. So we'll see where we go from here. But we're going to hit a commercial break really fast, and then we'll come back and we will look at the bowl games for Big Ten teams this year. Stay with us. Home Field is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Home Field brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Home Field digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle. Appreciate you being with us. Like and subscribe. Definitely helps us a lot and helps other people find the show. And we could just get rid of the spoil rotten SEC bias in their brain. So, bring them on over. Destroy SEC bias. We are fixing college football one podcast at a time here at the Big Ten Huddle. All right, Zach, Big Ten bowl games. I will list them off if you're listening on podcast. Rutgers versus Kansas State. USC versus Rutgers, Kansas State in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. USC and Pitt in the, this was such a long name. I can't see it on the logo there.
The Las Vegas Bowl.
The Las Vegas Bowl. Okay. Nebraska and Boston College in the Bad Mowers Bowl. What is that? The Detroit one? I forget where that one's at.
I feel like I don't know who sponsors these bowl games anymore.
I like a bowl game with a mower as a sponsor. That's all I got to say. Iowa versus Missouri in the Music City Bowl. Michigan versus Alabama Rose Bowl rematch in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Washington and Louisville in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. The Illinois versus South Carolina in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. And then the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Zach, this was perfect. PJ Fleck in the Minnesota Golden Gophers versus Virginia Tech. I want PJ drenched in mayo. Give me PJ drenched in mayo, Zach.
Depending on who stays and who doesn't opt out for this game, I think that could be a real possibility.
I mean, Max Brosmer's staying. Max Brosmer's he's not opting out of this, right?
Hopefully not. Well, like Daniel Jackson and Ariante Ursary,
I don't think they will. I think they have such a good contract. Ursary maybe. But
yeah, Ursary would be the one I'd be concerned about. But everybody else, hopefully would play in this game. My first thought is I think Minnesota is head and shoulders better than Virginia Tech. I think we're gonna see PJ Fleck get mayo dumped on
him. Looking through these bowls, listen, there's just some bowls I wish there was a Big Ten team in. The LA Bowl hosted by Gronk. That'd have been perfect. I'm trying to find the Snoop Dogg Bowl. Does anybody remember which one that is?
Snoop Dogg Bowl.
Yeah, remember Kent came in here talking about it.
Oh, man.
I forget which one is the Snoop Dogg Bowl. Oh, Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl, Colorado State, Miami, Ohio. Should have been a Big Ten team.
Yeah, that doesn't nearly seem as good.
Yeah.
Needs a little bit more Big Ten.
Yeah. All right, Zach. Which bowl game for the Big Ten are you most excited to watch here?
Well, so, hold on. I do have a question. So I have here that USC's playing Texas A&M, not Pitt. Did that
Oh,
get
I just forgot to move them out, didn't I? Okay. Sorry. You are correct. I made this kind of last second. I'll switch it out really fast. Go ahead and
okay?
talk
I'm
about that while
sorry.
I switch it out. No, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. So which one did you want me to? Do you want me to pick any of them
Just talk
or?
about whichever bowl you're most excited to watch for the Big Ten this year.
Oh man. I think I am most excited about Illinois versus South Carolina because I think South Carolina has a lot of hype, deservedly so. Like I think they are one of the hottest teams in the country, but I think a lot of people are sleeping on Illinois. Like I think Illinois has really good players. I really hope guys like Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant play, because I think if they do, I think it might be the most entertaining game. I think you've got a couple of good quarterbacks. I think you've got really good playmakers for Illinois. I think you have a just game wrecking defensive line for South Carolina, and you have a really good secondary for the Illini. I'd probably, Illini fans will be happy about this. I would probably favor South Carolina by a touchdown, but
Excellent for Illini fans.
yeah, it's
Excellent.
excellent for Illini fans, which means the Illini are going to win by two touchdowns. So it's good. Pat Bryant is not playing in the bowl, so that's sad. But yeah, I think that will be fun. The other game I'm looking forward to, I'm really looking forward to Michigan Alabama, the rematch, and I want to see how Alabama does against that defensive line if they play. Again, does Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant play? They may not, but also like who's going to opt out for Alabama? But I think it's just a fun. I think that will be a fun game.
Yeah, I was tempted to say Michigan, Alabama, but I'm with you. I just don't know how many opt outs there are going to be. And that's why I have to agree that Illinois, South Carolina is probably my favorite one. I think South Carolina has some good young talent that's going to play in this game. Unfortunately, yeah, Pat Bryant is going to be out, but I think that Brett Bielema, still good coach, has the opportunity to defeat an SEC team and kind of win back some of the favor of the Big Ten there, taking down South Carolina. But I'm also excited about Iowa and Missouri. I think that's going to be a good game. Iowa, kind of up and down this year with what they were able to do. But do they get one of their quarterbacks back? Is it going to be Jackson Stratton again? I haven't checked if Caleb Johnson's going to play in that game, but if he plays in that game, he could run all over Missouri. That would be fun. But I like these bowl games. I just don't know what we're gonna get. The opt outs are
Yeah.
the hardest thing.
Can you imagine if USC goes 2-0 against the SEC this year, and they finish 7-6?
That would be hilarious.
Yeah, the SEC is the best conference. Guys, you got beat by a bad SC team. Like, ugh. The one thing that's hard about all of these bowl games is you don't know who's opting out. And so like what Dave said, Iowa wins, Missouri's overrated. Here's the problem. If Caleb Johnson doesn't
That's
play,
saying something. He's a Minnesota fan. That's saying something that he's picking Iowa.
yeah, but if Caleb Johnson doesn't play, does Iowa get more than 100 yards?
I mean, I still think Tim Lester's done a good enough job with the offense and what's the backup's name? Patterson, I think it is. Like he's had a good year too. Obviously, it's not been Caleb Johnson, but when he's come in and ran for him, he's done a good job as well. So, um, I still think they go for 100 yards of offense though.
Okay, okay. All right. Yeah. I'll be honest, I do think depending on opt-outs, I do think they are positioned to do fairly well. Like I think Rutgers, Kansas State, I think Rutgers has a good shot to win that game. I think SC has a good shot to beat A&M. I think Nebraska has a good shot to beat Boston College. Um, I think Michigan and Illinois are probably the two where I'm like E. Um, but again, I think Minnesota matches up well with Virginia Tech. Um, Louisville will probably be favored against Washington, but like I don't think that's a slam dunk win for Louisville either. Like I think Washington has the talent to make things interesting there. And again, if Iowa, I think Iowa Missouri is really intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, everybody heard my thoughts on bowl games. It's just it's hard to get into them too much when there's all the opt outs and everything. And again, my thoughts are not for every single team. Just certain teams that maybe would be better. Looking toward the future. But at the end of the day, I'm really excited to see Nebraska in a bowl game. It stinks they won't have Tony White for them, but at the end of the day, we'll see. We'll see what happens with opt outs, and it's as always, it's going to be incredibly difficult to try and pick these games.
Yeah.
Did you do it with me last year trying to pick the bowl
No,
games?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
We'll do it this year. That'll be good.
it was funny. I would pick them, and then I would put the previews on, um, like YouTube and stuff like that. And then every single time I would get like 2 days later, I'd be like, "Oh, you didn't mention this guy opt out, this guy opt out, this guy opt out," and I'd go back and check, and they all opted out after we did our preview. I'm like, guys, I can't keep track of every single opt out.
We You got to let the podcasters know when you're opting out before we release our episodes. How dare you?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I I'll just I just sorry, I saw John's comment. I was like, I want to respond to it, but I, I'm getting ahead of myself. Bowl games, I think that the thing about bowl games that are fun is you have typically it's a slower season. You have time to kind of watch a little bit more football. And it's great just to watch a game and be like, it's fun. Order wings, order pizza, like hang out with friends. Like I think it's just an enjoyable experience for the fan. And I get it. I think for the players, like I think we need to figure out something different for the players. But at least until bowl games go the way of the dinosaur, I think I think it's an enjoyable experience, and I think some of these matchups are really really good.
Yep, I agree.
Can I address John's thought though, real quick?
This one.
Yeah, I think I'm concerned about Michigan because like you're talking about a team that's probably what sixth or seventh in the Big Ten versus like a top four team in the SEC. Like I think it's a bad matchup. And same thing with Illinois and South Carolina. Like if Illinois doesn't have their top receiver, like I don't know if I love the matchup between Illinois' offensive line and South Carolina's defensive line. That's all. Like it's matchup issues. It's not saying that I think one conference is. And by the way, I think this is true for probably for both you and me, Jr. We talk a big game about hating the SEC. The SEC is, I think, has the most good teams in the conference. Like, I think Alabama can beat anybody. I think Ole Miss can beat anybody. I think South Carolina was looking really good at the end of the season. I think the problem is we hate the media coverage of it, and like we hate that people want their losses to not count.
Yes. Yeah, I think I've made myself pretty clear, and I think that you've agreed for the most part. But my stance is I don't think the SEC is that high and above everybody else. Are they the best conference sometimes? Sure. They've been the best conference plenty of times. Is the Big Ten the best conference sometimes? Yeah, I think they're the best conference sometimes. Has the ACC been the best conference sometimes? Yes. I don't think so lately, but yes, they've been the best conference as well sometimes. So when I look at it, like, it's not so much me saying like Alabama actually sucks and South Carolina sucks. Like, I still think those teams deserve to be ranked, but I don't think they're the unbeatable. Like if Alabama, like the biggest argument I hate is when somebody says, "Oh yeah, Oregon was 12-0 in the Big Ten this year, but if they were in the SEC, they'd be 8-4." It's like, Okay, really? They'd have to play Oklahoma and they lose to them? Like, like that's my thing.
Yeah.
It's just the over arrogance of the SEC and how much it brainwashes other fans in college football who don't pay as much attention as us to say,
Hmm.
oh, well, the SEC has, 12 out of conference wins. And it's like, well, yeah, half of those were NC State and Michigan that were ranked really high and turned out to not be that good. But they were ranked
Hmm.
really high. I guess NC State was what, 24th? So they were high enough, and then they were both pretty much
Yeah.
500 teams,
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, John. I just, like, I look at it and I'm like, it's not so much me saying the SEC completely sucks and they're not good. It's just me trying to battle the SEC bias of like they're in the
Yeah.
untouchable conference and nobody can nobody can battle against them.
Yeah. Well, and even one other thing that's come up in the chat is that people are bringing up 2000, like since 2006, Big Ten or the SEC has won, I think, 13 national championships, ACC 3, Big Ten 2. And that's fine. There was a period where the SEC was dominant. There's also some shenanigans going on, 2011. Let's bump other deserving teams for Alabama. SEC teams also got more access. They got more
Yep.
opportunities. And some of that was deserved. Some of it wasn't. But that was that era. The reality is the landscape of college football has shifted a bit. And while you still have a lot of teams in the SEC that have the best talent or have better talent, it's not nearly as saturated as it once was because of the transfer portal, because of NIL, because of uh, all these
Other
other
teams being
things.
allowed to
Yeah,
pay.
other teams being allowed to pay, I mean, look no further than a year ago, where I think a lot of people thought it was going to be Texas Alabama in the national championship game for a rematch, and instead it was Michigan and Washington. And like Washington didn't recruit all that well either. A lot of it was transfer portal guys. And Kalen DeBoer having a system and recruiting to that system. Like that's how he built that team. Michigan was the same way. It wasn't recruiting traditionally. I mean, he had a lot of his guys, but it was a lot of transfer portal and development. And the landscape has changed. And so I, I think what drives me nuts is when we start to say, well, the SEC historically has been better, so they just are. It's like, no, it changes every year.
Yeah.
Like,
And you can't use like, oh, 2 years ago the SEC did this or they're the better conference. I John, that's not what we said. I still think the Big Ten is better this year.
um, we picked an all Big Ten national championship team
Yeah,
or national championship game.
yeah. I don't know. I think you're looking for like an absolute here, John. And I mean, if you want my absolute, I think the Big Ten
Well,
is a slightly better conference than the SEC this year. I think the SEC is probably deeper, but in years past, it's not been decided by who is the deeper conference. It's been who has the better top level teams. And so if we're continuing to go with that, I think the Big Ten is a better conference this year. Now, the SEC will try to flip that and say, no, it's about which conference is deeper. But every single time people have tried to use that in the past, they've said, oh no, it's about national championships and who has more teams in the playoffs. And so again, it's
yeah,
kind of combating some of the stuff. So,
yeah. I
but if you want my honest absolute, I think the Big Ten is slightly better this year than the SEC.
Yeah. It's funny. I was, I think John is really just trying to get us to grind our gears to get to the point where we
He
say that
just wants us to admit
Kent
Kent State is the
is the
best.
best team in the
Yeah,
country. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to be, I think B Bean, yeah, you've been talking a lot in the chat. And I'm bringing it up not because I think you bring up good fodder for us to talk about because we don't want to be Big Ten. We don't want to be like ESPN where like the SEC, oh my gosh, Alabama's not in the field. Let's cry about it. Like that's not what we want. We want to be fair about Big Ten teams, and like I think we're being fair with Ohio State when we say talent wise they have a really good shot to win, but coaching wise, like they've proven over and over again that they're not there. And so until they prove it to us otherwise, yeah. Um, so I think we have a Big Ten bent. We admit that freely, but we're also I think um Yeah, like I think we're very aware that Georgia could win the national championship this year. I think we're aware that Tennessee could win the national championship this year. I think they have really good teams. So, um, yeah,
Couldn't have said it better myself, Philip. ESPN is trash.
they
And on that
stink.
note, we will end the podcast there.
Mm.
All right. Zach, anything you want to get to before we get out of here?
No, man, this is fun. Yeah, this is a fun time. I think I was a little too excited. I think I'm the reason why we went long tonight because
Oops.
I was just had so many feelings about what people were saying on the interwebs, and I'm like, this is dumb. We got to dispel some myths tonight. So,
Thank goodness we have a
um,
podcast to talk it all out so we don't have to argue on the interwebs with everybody.
oh my gosh, oh my gosh, people, oh my gosh,
No,
I
Philip.
yeah, no, we're not doing 3 hours. We're not doing.
That's
Although I
reserved for when Dylan is on in the off season when we just mess around the entire time.
oh DK, um,
We haven't
I do
seen
have
DK in the chat lately in the football episodes. It's mainly been the basketball episodes when he's in the
I can't,
chat.
it
Couldn't
can't
imagine why.
possibly couldn't possibly be because his team is not really a team right now. Um, yeah, I do have an idea for us though that would be a 3 hour show, but we'll
We'll
see
save that
what
for when we actually do it. Let's not bring up the
yeah
idea now because we might actually do it.
yeah.
Um, you're correct, Bean Bean. If ESPN calls, I would pick up the phone because then I could infiltrate and change from within. There we go.
I'd pick up the phone. I don't know if I would do it. I love what I do. I love my other calling way too much. So, but
Barry Odom hired by. Is that official, Philip? Did that officially happen?
did that?
Philip is either trolling us or it officially happened. I can't imagine it happened at 11 o'clock at night
No,
on a.
he 8 hours ago.
Oh, eight
Barry
hours ago.
Odom.
How do we miss that? Man, I've been hanging up Christmas lights all day. My house is just one big sun in the middle of our neighborhood. Not
Mm,
exactly that, but we got a lot of lights on
one
the
big
house.
son. That's big. I think you called that, didn't you?
He was on our list, and I said that he was probably one of the best options, if not the best.
Mm.
So, you know what? Good for Purdue. I think that Purdue made a good decision there. I think that it fit all the criteria of what I think they needed to do. And at the end of the day, he's even got it in the bio. It's official. It's in the
Mm.
Twitter bio. And he's even got a little here, maybe I should show this. He's even got a little edited picture of himself. There we go.
Yeah. Speaking of edits, you didn't show your Kurt Signetti reaction to the
Oh,
playoff.
I did not. You're correct. This was my reaction to a playoff. Oh, if we're not careful, we will go 3 hours, Zach.
Yeah, we got to end. We got to end. It's over. It's over.
Oh boy. All right, everybody. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an awesome season. I'm looking forward to bowl season as well. When bowl season gets here, I know maybe there's not always as much juicy stuff to talk about. Come hang out for the vibes. Come have a good time. Listen to us after the fact. And continue to listen because we got some stuff we're gonna announce here soon. We're not quite ready to announce it just yet, but we got some stuff that's in the works right now. We're gonna announce soon. So I think one last thing, Zach. John really wants us to talk about it. Herb Street, his youngest son, Chase Herb Street, is going to Michigan. Do you have any thoughts on former Ohio State quarterback uh, Kirk Herbstreit, his youngest son, Chase Herbstreit? He had another son that went to Ohio State. I think the two others went to Clemson, if I'm
Clemson.
not mistaken.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Chase going to Michigan?
I mean, it just strengthens how much Ohio State fans are annoyed with Kirk. That's
Or maybe
about
how
it.
much he's annoyed at them?
Yeah, Kirk makes how much money? He needs to not worry about what how the Ohio State fan base takes him and just, you know, like don't worry about it, man. Like,
We said the same thing about Joel, too, so we're consistent. Joel
yeah.
Klatt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like just
Um,
just
I will
it's
just
fine.
say as long as Sharon Moore is the coach at Michigan, do not be surprised that stuff like this happens because, you know, up there, he is doing everything he can to try and do little jabs like this, which I'm not saying is wrong. I actually think it's, if I was a Michigan fan, I'd really like it.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not
Yeah.
saying he shouldn't do it. But just little things like this. They stole the running back coach. They stole a high level recruiting person for him in the offseason. So
Yep.
it's little stuff like this he likes to do, and it does get under Ohio State's skin a little bit. I don't know if this one does so much, but other stuff has.
I feel like the biggest thing for Ohio State is don't play like I think Michigan is playing this game because they know it's working. So like for Ohio State, it's like don't let this bother you. Like they need to look at the recruiting rankings and be like, who are you? Like, who cares? Like,
Well, and I
stop
think
letting it
that they
bother
were
you. Be
probably
confident.
doing with Chase what they did with his other son, which is, hey, you can always walk on here, and you can you always have a spot here at Ohio State, but like we're not going to use a scholarship on you, especially in today's day and age where scholarships are more valuable than they once were. But all right, those are my thoughts, John. Hope you enjoyed those, and we'll check in on that, Philip. We'll see if Kirk Herbstreit's helping pay the Underwood NIL. I hear it's Larry Ellison, but that might just be a surname for Kirk Herbstreit.
Yeah.
Who knows? Him and his dog. What's his new dog's name?
Peter.
Such an interesting name for a dog. Hummus says, thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for being here, Hummus. We appreciate you. And BBB. Bean says, good show. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. We appreciate all of you. Great job listening. Fantastic listeners tonight.
Well, good stuff. Yeah, in the chat. The chat was blowing up tonight. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Gives us a lot to talk about, and we enjoy interacting with you all. So, all right, everybody, thanks so much. We appreciate it. We will see you tomorrow morning. Kent will be on, and maybe me, maybe Sonny. I don't know. We're not working out those details yet, but it'll be around 10 a.m. Power Rankings basketball episode. Tuesday, we'll have another episode talking about more games, stuff like that. I'm sure we'll have more discussion of news and stuff like that coming out. Transfer portal, we'll always hit on that on Tuesdays as well. And then Thursday, another basketball episode. So for now, 4 episodes a week. Some things could change there, but for now, that's the plan. So thanks, everybody. We appreciate it. Have a good one.